Hi, this is the second update of the season, 23-24 season from avalanchecenter.org. I'm Jim Frankenfield, Director. And this is just a very short update for early season. In the first video, we talked about some early season problems, and we mentioned cross-loading, gullies, and couloirs. And we talked about the base that's forming and the weed crystals that form on the ground. And that's what we have here on the board. And that's been forming in many areas since it's down on the ground. So where are we now? It's still very early season, so there's still a lot of variability. I'm seeing reports of resorts moving their opening day up earlier and other ones moving it back later. One report was that on the whole, on the average, we had a lot of snow in early September and November, and a lot of dry weather in mid-November. So there's been a lot of back and forth weather. They're currently calling for a lot of snow in Colorado and Utah. And I think, 30th was yesterday. I think in the last day or two, they were calling for a lot of snow in Switzerland. And there was an avalanche warning by the U.S. Embassy in Bulgaria. They don't really issue warnings, but they had a note about a certain mountain that's popular there. And by the way, you can get updates and news like that on our newsletter. Go to the website, avalanche-center.org. Go to the news section, just /news, capital N. Just choose it from the front page. And you'll find an archive of Avalanche News Today there. It sounds like it's daily, but right now it's been every few days. And that's a free newsletter. You can catch up with it on the website, or you can subscribe to get it by email. And email is just a copy of what's on the website. There's no commentary. It's not an update list. We have a separate list to update people on the project. So that's just every few days, maybe during the winter, it'll get to every day. It's just news stories related to snow avalanches. So we talked about how this layer forms, and I don't want to go back through that. I can go back to the last video, and this is the typical early season base, particularly in the continental and transitional climate. This is mostly, most of the time, a non-issue in the maritime climate. And that might be partly because of something that came up about 2 weeks ago on Henry's Avalanche talk, which I'm aware of but don't follow. I just saw a report on this comment in the news story. It wasn't by Henry, it's somebody else. But they were saying that in Europe they had a lot of weak snow, but they didn't have a lot of rain and varying snow levels, I think. They even had mudslides, flooding, and a lot of wet weather. And they're saying that's actually good because it's going to saturate this with water and turn it into ice and it won't be a problem. So my point last time was that there's sort of this news blast that, oh, this is a terrible layer, it's going to haunt us all winter long. Well, we don't know what's going to happen all winter long. At some elevations, this may have melted, it may have become wet and freeze. At other elevations, it's going to be a weak layer of sugary rains, except that they're much bigger than sugar. So right now we have a lot of snow coming in Colorado and Utah. I'm sure there are plenty of areas where this layer exists, and it will be a problem since you put a bunch of new snow on top of it. It's not going to support that very well. And if it does support it, it may be kind of precarious until some person comes along on skis or a board, or the snow will be up and it may collapse. So at least this layer isn't really, this is a kind of layer that will propagate a long distance. And I saw another article and they were talking about cracks propagating. Well, this isn't a crack in the new snow that's propagating as much as it's more a collapse. There's a lot of air in this layer and there's no cohesion. Once you collapse this, that will spread across a large distance. So we have new snow on a weak layer. Is that going to be a problem all winter? Well, first of all, it may not be a problem now everywhere. It's only going to be a problem when you have this. So If this became wet and saturated and froze, it won't be a problem. If it melted, it won't be a problem. And then in places it will be, until we get more layers on here. We'll have weak layers up here, and then we'll have the same thing. We'll have a new snow slab on top of a weak layer. It'll just be a different weak layer. So this is a short-term problem where it exists, and that's it. We'll be cautious about it in places like Colorado and Utah. Probably at many elevations, particularly along shaded slopes that are cold and shady, and it would not have melted there. So after that, we don't know how long it will be a problem. I mentioned before that in a continental snowpack, which is inherently defined by conditions of being dry, with isolated scattered storms and a lot of dry and cold weather in between, we have a thin snowpack, and that combination of conditions does often make this layer last longer. And in some years, it could be a problem through a lot of the season, or essentially most of it, or all of the season some years. And that's what can happen in a continental snowpack. It's more likely there. What's more likely in a transitional snowpack region like Utah is that you'll end up with a lot more snow. You'll be a lot more worried about layers up here, and you'll stop worrying about this at some point. When will that happen? We don't know. So this idea that, oh, this is terrible, it's going to haunt us all winter, that's really not an appropriate comment unless you have a crystal ball. So it's a problem now, but don't assume this will be a prevalent problem all winter long. I guess the other comment is if this space turns into ice, and there were many years where I've noticed this happen, particularly in the Columbia Ranges of Canada, there'll be a hard ice layer, and then there'll be a lot of snow. And this ice layer won't be a problem all winter long. But for some reason, in spring, you can get very large slides down on these hard ice layers that form very early in the season, often in November. And I remember seasons where that became a big problem in the spring. That may be from meltwater percolating down, maybe just from warming. But if that turns to ice, as they were talking about in Henry's Avalanche talk, that may firm it up and make it solid for now, but much later that could be a problem too. But it's also not one I'd be worrying about every day through the whole winter. So that's where we are, and it's highly variable right now. Some places are getting a lot of snow, some are melting snow, some ski resorts are, I think some opened and then closed and postponed reopening. And this is not unusual for early December. There have been some avalanches. I'm not sure what they slid on. Some of them may have been shallow slab of snow on this. Some of them may have just been wind slabs. Some cases people were caught, but these so far have been small avalanches. But they are happening, and when we get this next snow, they will be larger and we'll start to see more activity. Sometime between now and the end of December is usually when we start to see the first fatalities reported. Some years it's been the end of December before we had any fatal avalanches, although certainly there could be non-fatal human involvements before that. Sometimes it's earlier in December. So we're getting to the point where there will be enough snow to be more of a concern, and the consequences could be more serious. And also remember right now that in this, especially something like a cross-loaded gully, the wind's loaded across the gully. If that slides, there's not a lot of snow in there, but there's enough snow to slide even if there's not enough snow anywhere else. When that snow slides, you're going to have really ugly ride down a bunch of rocky slopes, probably. There's nothing underneath. There's no base. Some of that terrain may not have any base all winter. So if you're seeking out those places that do have snow, remember that underneath that snow there might not be much, and be aware of terrain traps and the potential for trauma injuries. So That's it for now. At some point, maybe we'll have a weekly video. If you want to keep up with news, and it's not just this kind of news, but news about anything related to avalanches, it could be commercial, professional, recreational, anything related to snow avalanches, you can join that newsletter. And we have been updating the incidents page, although there's not much on it yet, but it's ready for this season. There was a serious incident in Iran, some climbers. There was a warning that conditions were known to be hazardous. I believe 5 climbers died and 4 were injured. The information that is available is on the website now, if you remember. And there's a summary with a link to that in the news. If you're getting the Avalanche news today, you would see stories like that too. So that's it. Until next time, and stay safe. When there's something more to say, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll make another video. Become a little more active for the winter. Bye.